Welcome back to Budget Builds. We're going to be showing you guys how to do front brakes on a 2008 Toyota 4Runner. If you guys are new to the channel, go ahead and subscribe and hit the like button, and make sure you hit the bell notification so you guys can know when we post our videos. We're going to go ahead and remove this wheel and take a look at the brakes. So as you guys can see, these rotors are pretty well grooved. They're pretty rusted, but we're really looking at these grooves in here. We're not even going to worry about machining them. We're just going to go ahead and get new rotors. I'm going to show you guys how to see if you need new calipers or not, and we'll for sure do new pads. Anytime you do new pads or new rotors, you want to do new pads so you don't have the old pads wear into your rotors and you'll just groove the new rotors. So let me show you guys how to test these calipers to make sure they're sliding properly and not seized up. This caliper is pretty rusted up, but we're going to go ahead and test it to see if it's still good. What I'm going to do is stick a pry bar between the caliper and the rotor. Kind of pry to see if I can get them to move at all. It doesn't look like this is moving. So we're going to have to end up putting new calipers on here. Yeah, those aren't moving at all. So we're going to go ahead and take the calipers off and the rotors off, and we have to measure the rotors. They make a few different sizes for this model. We're going to measure the rotors, disconnect the brake lines, but before we do any of that, we're going to spray everything down with PB Blaster or WD-40 so the penetrating oil can start working while we go get parts and stuff like that. Since we're changing the calipers, it's going to be pretty easy. We're just going to take these two back bracket bolts off, take the entire caliper off, take the rotor off, and not have to worry about taking these old brake pads out. So we're going to get new brake pads, new calipers, and new rotors. And then after all that's put together, we're going to have to bleed the brakes, and we should be back and rolling. So I'm going to start spraying down all those spots. So we're going to use these little clamps, and we're going to clamp off the brake lines since we're going to be opening up the brake system. We're still going to need to bleed it afterwards, but this will let us have keep us from having a huge mess. So I'm going to go ahead and disconnect the brake line. We're going to be using a 17 millimeter to be doing the caliper brackets. So we got the brake line disconnected up here. We got both of the bracket bolts out. We're going to start prying this caliper off. And look at that, the rotor came free too. So here's the old pads. They were completely gone. They started cutting into the actual rotor itself. You can see here this pad is good. This pad was completely worn out. So that's going to be a sign that your calipers are locked up or something. Something isn't sliding properly. So all the wear went directly to this side and not this side. We got our new caliper here, brand new. We had to turn the old ones in for core. So we're gonna go ahead and put the brake line back on there. We'll just leave it a little loose for now so we can still move it around once we get it mounted to the hub. That'll be good. So we'll set this aside. We also have our new rotors here. They go right on. We went ahead and checked and compared them to the old ones, and they are the same ones. So now we're gonna get our brake pads. Put the caliper bolts back in. Alrighty, so now what we're gonna do is we're going to install our brake pads. So our brake pads, they come in two different types here. That right there is your squealer. You wanna have one on each side of the vehicle, so you know when your pads are getting low, those will start squealing before the pads get too low and tear up your rotors. So I usually put these in the back, on the back side of the caliper. So we'll go ahead and grab it. It slides right into place. Make sure the caliper's seated. And we'll go ahead and take our pad without a squealer, and it slides right into place too. So you're gonna have these two guide holes right here that the pads are going to slide on. You're gonna take these slide pins, feed them in through the back of the caliper, through the pad. So just slide the pin through here. Take this little pin right here. It's gonna lock it into place. Now before putting this on here, you can also put brake lube between the pad and the caliper. And you also want it along these slide pins so they don't seize up and start rusting and lock up again, and like what we had before, have the same problem. We're gonna go ahead and put this bottom pin in. Slides through like that. We'll grab one of these cotter pins. Goes in like that. So we got these return springs here. There's little holes on the pads that these go in to, like so. They just kind of sit down in there like that, and that makes sure that your pads return after you hit the brake pedal, and when you let off, it will keep your pads kind of put back into place. Alrighty, so now that we got this side done, what we're gonna do is take this clamp off, and we're actually gonna open this bleeder and kind of let it gravity feed to start bleeding, and we'll move on to the next side, get that all together, and then we'll start bleeding the brakes. So we got both sides all together, both calipers on, all the pads in, rotors. So I opened the bleeders and I let them kind of gravity bleed for about 5 minutes now. They both started leaking. So what we're gonna do is I have Jackson in the car, and I'm gonna have him pump the brake pedal up. And then after it's pumped up, he's gonna hold it. I'm gonna say open, so I'll crack the bleeder. Fluid will come out, and then I'll say closed, and then when I say closed, he's gonna let off the brake pedal, and when the bleeder's open, make sure don't let the brake pedal come back, because that's gonna let air back into the system. So Jackson, go ahead and pump it up. I can see the pads are already kind of compressing, so there's gonna be a little bit of air in there. But all right, Jackson, go ahead and hold it down and tell me when your foot goes all the way to the floor. You can hear the air come out, and I'm gonna close the bleeder. Go ahead and let up. Go ahead and push down on it. Down. Alrighty, I got the bleeder closed. Go ahead and pump them up again. Give them a few pumps. And the person that's pumping the pedal should notice the pedal get stiffer as we get the air out of the system. So go ahead and hold it. Let me know when it goes all the way down. Bleeder's closed. Open. So now it doesn't look like we're getting any air. What we're gonna do is check the brake fluid reservoir that's gonna be located under the hood, and we'll make sure we still have plenty of fluid, and we're gonna move on to the next side. So when you're bleeding the brakes, make sure you get all the air out of the lines. Make sure whenever you crack that bleeder, it's not still shooting air out. You want a good solid stream of brake fluid coming out. Make sure it's a clean stream. If it's super dirty, you're gonna wanna start flushing your brake fluid. So after we got the bleeders all tightened up, I went through, I double checked all my stuff, make sure I had all the bolts tight, because you don't wanna mess around with your brakes. We got the wheels back on, we're gonna torque them, and we're gonna also check what our brake fluid level is. If it's low, we're gonna add a little bit. Depending on what system you're doing, if you're doing all 4 corners of the car, you're gonna have to really bleed the brakes, and you also have to bleed the ABS system on some vehicles. If you get back in your vehicle and you have a soft pedal, you're most likely still have air in your lines. You'll wanna keep bleeding. Sometimes you'll have to go through a whole container of brake fluid to get all the air out. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna put everything back, torque the wheels, check the brake fluid, close it all up, and we're gonna test it. We're gonna go take it for a test drive. So when we go on this test drive, what we're gonna do is we're gonna heat the brakes up pretty good. We're gonna get them a good use. You don't wanna slam on them, but you wanna get them hot. Kind of just lay on the brakes right here. Making sure it's not pulling one way or the other. If it's pulling to the right, that means your left one isn't working. If it's pulling to the left, your right's not working. So it seems like it's pulling just fine. It's not doing anything abnormal. Just come up to a stop sign here. We're just kind of doing long stops to really put some heat in them. We just got done with the test drive. Whenever you're finished, you want to get out of the vehicle and visually inspect everything. As long as everything felt good, you're going to take your hand and feel around. Don't touch the rotors, but make sure you can kind of feel some heat coming off of them. You're going to make sure each side is about the same. You don't want them crazy hot smoking, but you don't want them to be cold. So make sure they're working and everything. After that, you're good to go. Make sure, like I said, visually inspect, make sure everything is all there. Whenever you're working with brakes, it can be really dangerous. So anytime you do any brake work and you start moving the vehicle, always pump up the brake pedal. I've seen many times when people get into a vehicle after doing brake jobs and they go to start it, put it in drive, and they have no brake pedal for the first few pumps. So remember, anytime you touch your brakes, pump the pedal before you move it. That's gonna wrap up this episode. I hope you guys enjoyed. Like I said, if you haven't been here before, make sure you subscribe, hit the like button, comment below what you wanna see. Don't forget that we're also doing our virtual car show. We got a few guys that we're going out to film, and we're gonna have an episode for that, and make sure you guys send in your videos and stuff and stories, and we can get you in that virtual car show. I think it'd be a really cool thing since all the stuff with the COVID's been going on, and some of you guys might not be able to make it to any car shows this season. Make sure you stay tuned for that episode coming up. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.